All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first 5 Miles from Anywhere meeting of 2024. Um, a happy new year, as I said earlier, to you all. This starts, I was looking at the calendar, and this is the 5th year of 5 Miles from Anywhere. So it's kind of cool. Of course, we started actually in middle of 2020 during the pandemic, so it's not like a full year. But if we're thinking of seasons, this would be our 5th season, which is kind of cool. And we're going to keep going strong. And I look forward to another year of meetings with everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen for a little bit during the announcement time. And then, of course, our London tour guide extraordinaire, Robin Rowles, will take us on a tour of Murder in the Canon. So let me just share my screen. One sec. Now there's always, I've been having technical difficulties this morning, so there we go. There we are. Okay. So a couple of things. So first of all, here is our agenda for today. We'll have announcements. Then we'll have that presentation on Murder in the Canon by Robin. And we'll have our discussion, which is always a fun part of it. Couple of things. Obviously, January is the big Sherlock Holmes month. The Sherlock Holmes Society of London annual dinner, that should say 2024, not 202, is January 20th this year. So a little late. And then I guess everything's a little late this year. And then the BSI weekend, that should say 2024 as well. Man, oh yeah, I did not have the best morning here. Is January 10th through 14th in New York City. If you are going to be there in person, please stop by the BSI Merchants Room on Saturday, January 13th from 9 a.m. to noon, and say hello to me at the Belanger Books table. I'll be there. Brian will be there as well. And several of our authors will stop in, and we'll be happy to sign books for you. But you don't have to buy a book. Please just come by and say hello. It's always great to meet the 5 Miles members in person. Now, I know a lot of the events are actually sold out this year. Here's kind of a list of them, but a lot of these, I was surprised to see how many had sold out. On the plus side, it's good news because it tells us that the Sherlockian community is alive and well for in-person gatherings after the pandemic. But on the other hand, it's difficult for those who just want to make a last-minute decision to come to some of these events. But I do want to share a couple of events that are open to the public. They're not sold out, and a number of them are actually available on Zoom, so you can actually participate anywhere in the world, okay? So one I really want to say is one of the most fun events of the BSI weekend is the ACD Society's Doylean Honors Awards. And the running of the Wessex Cup, which is actually the really fun part of it. I encourage you, if you're not going to be there in person, watch it at home. It's a blast. The awards ceremony is a really nice one. The awards are given out for categories from the Doylean, the Arthur Conan Doyle Society. They're in fiction, nonfiction, visual and performing arts. But the Wessex Cup, you can see that little one there. I believe that's Madeline Quinones's one for this year. It's a real treat. It's when a bunch of Sherlockians get wind-up horses like this one you see here, and we race them across the table. There's like categories and things, and then the winner competes with the next winner, and it gets whittled down until there's one winner. And last year, my friends, believe it or not, I won the race. I was actually first place last year. In fact, I'll be returning with my horse and my little trophy this year. There's going to be a photo, I guess. Ross Davies was like, I want you guys to have a photo with the winner of last year with the winner of this year. And maybe next year, We'll have a race of the winners. I don't know. That'd be kind of fun. I'll see what Ross comes up with for that. But it's a lot of fun, and it is online. You can stream it. Mark Jones of Doings of Doyle hosts it, and he sends it out, and it's really, really fun. So I hope you guys some of you can watch it. And then on Friday, the next day, the Literary Agents has their annual meeting via Zoom. It's a silent society of the Baker Street Irregulars dedicated to studying Arthur Conan Doyle's works. And the meeting's hosted this year by Ashley Polasek, who is the author of Being Sherlock and the editor of the Conan Doyle Review, which has just started up again. And Mark Jones is co-hosting it, and he does the Doings of Doyle podcast. Anyone can become a member of the Literary Agents. The 3 requirements are: 1, you sign up for the annual meeting, and I'll send a link out if you're interested. 2, you just attend the meeting, and 3, you're going to be nice to everybody who is participating, and at all other times as well, if you can. That's it. There's no hoops, there's no dues, and it's really a really nice podcast. I can't remember the name of the speaker this year, but they were a really great Doylean speaker. I know it's a professor who's going to be talking this year, so strongly recommend it. That's Friday morning for those of you who can make it. Okay. And then for those of you who will be in person, the Broad Street Irregulars, we're going to have a lunch gathering January 11th. So on Thursday, it's the Solar Pond Society, started by Luther Norris, BSI, and is dedicated to keeping the memory of solar ponds alive. We will have if you can't make the in-person one, and it's really informal, it's after the Doylean Awards. It's also after the Morley Walk, for those of you who are in person. If you do either of those events, a lot of people go to McSorley's afterwards, and we're just going to have like an informal gathering and just chatting. If you're not going to be in person, though, Saturday, February 17th, from 2:30 to 4 Eastern time is the annual PSI investiture meeting. And it's going to be awesome this year. Peter Blah is going to say a few words about the origin or the early days of the PSI. Max McGee, I believe is on this call right now, is going to give a talk on journalist days at the University of Wisconsin. And then I'll have the honor, along with Dr. Vanderberg, of presiding over the investiture ceremony. So I do invite you all to come and kind of watch. It's a lot of fun, and we're real excited about this year's class. So here we go. Then my last announcement, I know this one was a long one, okay, is if you haven't known, or if you didn't know this, I was on Hear Sherlock Everywhere, the podcast, in December. And it was a lot of fun. And Bert and Scott, they run a great program. If you get a chance to listen to it, you'll hear a bit about how I discovered Sherlock Holmes, about Belanger books, and about some exciting events in 2024. All right, so I'm gonna, I talked enough here. I'm gonna stop sharing and just welcome if anybody has any announcements that I missed, because I'm sure there's a lot going on right now. Feel free to unmute yourself and let me know, or say something to the group. All right, I guess I talked a lot because I think we hit everything. Anybody have a silent society having a dinner? My one in Denver, that Dr. Watts' Neglected Patients, ours is coming up. I believe it's January 28th. I think that's right. So 27th, 28th. Does anybody else have a society meeting? All right.
I have one with my group, but it's supposed to be tomorrow, but because of the snow, we've postponed it for a few weeks.
Oh, okay. That's right. You guys are getting a nor'easter, aren't you? Finally.
Finally.
I'm glad it's coming this weekend and not next weekend.
That's right. That is right.
Impact the PSI weekend festivities.
The
Robin,
Notorious Canary Trainers is also tomorrow. We're having a birthday luncheon. And we got a
Excellent.
couple of inches, but we didn't get the squall that you all got.
We were lucky in Denver. It actually went south of us. It hit Colorado Springs, but it didn't hit us. So, Alesh, did you have something?
Yes, we had a meeting today at noon in Prague. 12 of our members from the Czech Society of Sherlock Holmes met there, and we celebrated Sherlock Holmes' birthday, and it was an in-person meeting after a long time, so it was quite nice.
Very nice. Oh, in Prague. That's fantastic, Alesh. Thank you for sharing that with us. Anybody else? All right. Well, let me introduce our speaker for today. Oops, hold on. I need to share my screen again for a second. All right, there we go. All right, our guest speaker for today is Robin Rowles. Robin is a qualified City of London guide and is a member of Footprints of London Limited. He has 3 Sherlock Holmes walks in the City of London. Robin also leads walks on a variety of other subjects, including H.G. Wells, Doctor Who, and the English Civil War, which is the subject of his book, The Civil War in London, Voices from the City, which was released in 2018. Robin has written articles for the Sherlock Holmes Society of London, Les Cercle Holmes of Parisian, and the Sherlock Holmes Society of India. His short story, The Two-Ring Mystery, or How Mrs. Hudson Cooked the Evidence, was published in the anthology Sherlock Holmes of Baking Street. And I just had to throw in this picture of me and Brian with Robin when we did his tour. The man who, I believe it was the man who died twice or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of it, Robin. But where we're standing there is the location in The Man with the Twisted Lip, where Hugh Boone was begging for money. And the fact that Robin knows the location tells you just how great a tour guide he is. And so let's give a warm virtual welcome to Robin. I'm going to stop sharing now, so Robin will be able to share his screen. Good job, Robin. And I'm also going to mute everyone here except for Robin. But Robin, you should be able to share now.
Yeah, I'm just picking my way through the technical.
Robin, you're muted.
Robin, you're muted. Robin, do you see you're muted? You have to start over, my friend. Sorry about that.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Sorry about that. Yeah. I don't know if that was me or you did that, but we're good now. There we go.
Okay, let's start again. So the presentation with the unfeasibly long title, Murder Rooms and Death Traps, Indoor Deaths in the Canon. And Conan Doyle was very big on this. And of course, we start with the classic. I can't push the A Study in Scarlet, and there's Sherlock Holmes looking at the body of Enoch J. Drebber, who of course had to play a miniature version of Russian roulette with the poison pills. His secretary Joseph Stangerson, of course, was merely stabbed. So he had an equally efficient end, but not as imaginative as being poisoned. We have here the sign of 4, and we here see a brother Bartholomew killed by the poison dart. But the standout of this story for me is really the chases and manhunts that go through the story. Okay, now we come into the monthly series of adventures, and you're quite a way into these before you get into any murders. It's quite a sedate entry, and we have the man with a twisted lip and Sherlock Holmes to a number of eluded murders. We should be rich fellows indeed if we could be given some money for every fellow that went for the trap door. And here he is working undercover in the bar of gold, and of course he's trying to solve the mystery of the missing man, who, as we know, turns up in the disguise of Hugh Boone in the police station. Quite a twist. The Speckled Band. One of my favourite stories, although scientifically implausible, because snakes don't drink milk and they can't climb ropes. And it's a matter of some puzzlement as to how the bad doctor was able to recall the snake back through the air vent. But of course, the intriguing part, of course, is the arrangement of the furniture. The fake air vent, an air vent that doesn't ventilate, the fake bell pull. What is going on here? The Engineer's Thumb. A sinister story with a nuanced twist. Victor Hatherley is quite intelligent, but he seems to lack a little bit of common sense. Going out on a secret commission at the dead of night with somebody who he doesn't know. And of course, his curiosity gets the better of him. And the villainous colonel tries to kill him twice. First of all, in the compression chamber, and then a murderous attack with an axe, which merely takes his thumb off. Although there is some redemption in this story. He's saved by the German woman and the accomplice or lackey Ferguson, who at least shows a degree of conscience in saving him from the colonel. The Stockbroker's Clerk, A Tale of Two Cities, not London and Paris, but London and Birmingham. And this stockbroker's clerk, as we know, is lured away from his job in Mawson's to carry out meaningless clerical work. So one half of the two brothers, the confidence gang, can rob the bank. And of course, we have the murder. And once the brother finds out that his brother's been caught and will surely hang, he attempts to commit suicide. The Musgrave Ritual. As we know, Brunton was found at the bottom of the well where the crown was hidden. He had an accomplice, Rachel Howes, who obviously fled the scene. And in the book, it's speculated, was it misadventure or murder? And just to clarify, under UK law, in a coroner's court, misadventure is the verdict given to an accidental death where the person that has died has initiated the train of events. So basically, it's an accident, but if they hadn't started what they were doing, they wouldn't have ended up dead. And the big question is, did the prop slip or was it pushed? And what became of Rachel Howes? We will never know. The Crooked Man. Colonel James Barclay was found dead. And was it murder, or was it natural causes? Was it a guilty conscience? And of course, we have the mini mystery within this story which creature has dog-like paws, can climb curtains, and is evidently carnivorous because it went up the curtains to get to the budgie. Ooh. This story always gives me the creeping horrors. The idea of being drugged is bad enough, and the idea of being buried alive is even worse. But put the two together, and it's almost impossible to contemplate. And this must have really struck a nerve for Victorian readers because they had a lifelong horror of being buried alive. And Victorian coffins before the burial often had a little bell which the person could ring to show that they was alive and well and shouldn't be buried. Okay, the three Gary Debs, another one of ACD's diversion stories in which somebody is decoyed away from their normal residence or place of business so some other skullduggery can carry on. And we have the little trope here about Watson being wounded and Holmes showing his human side. But as it has recently been demonstrated by Madeline Quinones, that is not the case. Holmes always shows his human side. It's just that we don't notice it very often. Another personal favourite, The Dying Detective. Holmes pulls his sickie. Watson goes undercover. Literally, he hides under the bed, and Holmes plays the part right to the very end, until he tells his would-be assailant turn up the gas, which of course is the signal for the police to pile in and make the arrest. And please treat that box very gingerly. The retired colour man obviously used quite a lot of imagination there and made a nice little gas chamber. And he was only undone by the fact that one of his victims had a lead pencil and managed to scrawl part of a message to the outside world, even as the air faded from his lungs. We were murdered. Black Peter. Very hard to pin this one down. No pun intended. But Inspector Hopkins misreads the clues. Harpoon, tobacco pouch, rum and water, and he arrests, in Holmes's words, or Watson's words, I should say, a young man, frail and thin. And Holmes chimed in, can we really attribute this crime to this anemic youth? To push a harpoon through a man's chest? Time to re-examine the facts. The Devil's Foot. Holmes carries out a reckless experiment with Watson. It's almost unforgivable, but in Holmes's eyes, it's necessary to crack the case. And of course, it's a stern warning to geologists and scientists everywhere. If you have poisonous substances around the house, they should be kept under lock and key, and make sure you know where the key is at all times. The Sussex Vampire. The clues all seem to pile up in one direction. But as Holmes often observes, evidence often points two ways. And it is not the mother who is the vampire, because there is no vampire. It's simply poisoned arrowheads. And as we know, the mother was attempting to suck poison out of the wound, which is the time-honoured way of dealing with venom. The Golden Pince-Nez. Torrential rain helps the investigation, because it shows where footprints lie in the garden. These spectacles hold the clue because Holmes is able to give a pen portrait of the wearer, and this story, of course, is remarkable for the sheer volume of cigarettes smoked during the course of the investigation. The Missing Three-Quarter, one of the saddest stories in the canon. Not a murder, just a death by natural causes. And everybody gets it wrong, but there is a sort of nuanced reconciliation. Dr. Leslie Armstrong turns his carriage back, and obviously, as the explanation unfolds, he realizes that he and Holmes were actually working on the same side all along. The Reigate Squire. There's one definite murder, although that takes place outside, and here we have the Cunninghams, father and son, attempting to murder Sherlock Holmes. Luckily, they do not succeed in doing so, but we do have the mini comic episode of Watson sending the fruit bowl flying as a diversion while Holmes looks for the incriminating document. The Red Circle. An interesting story, quite a detailed build-up. But in the end, it's a simple stabbing in self-defense. Although we do get some satisfaction that Black Giorgiano of the mafia is dispatched in the process. The Resident Patient. I've always thought of Blessington or Sutton as a confidence trickster in disguise. He's not after money. He's got money. What he's doing is setting himself up. He's after protection. Of course, as we know, that protection fails, and he's dispatched in a very definite way by hanging. The Greek Interpreter. Another case of a clever man come unstuck. Mr. Molas is virtually kidnapped, and we have the bizarre ritual of him communicating with a man in sticking plaster by messages on chalkboards. And of course, we have that other scene in the house where Mr. Molas and the unfortunate Greek gentleman are gassed, poisoned by charcoal gas, although Mr. Molas does at least survive. The Empty House. Possibly the most anticipated story in the canon after the great hiatus from the final problem. You couldn't get a better title for that. And I can't get over, ever since I first read it, it's a stakeout within a stakeout. Holmes and Watson are camped out in virtually the same room as Holmes's would-be assailant. And of course, we had that clever trick of the dummy and poor Mrs. Hudson down on her hands and knees, turning it around at regular intervals. Charles Augustus Milverton, the worst man in London. Holmes and Watson take some extreme measures. And if you'll just bear with me a second, I'm going to try and I was going to try and put something in the chat. I'll put it in after the end of the presentation. But it's just a little Easter egg relating to this story. The Abbey Grange. The gentleman that killed the baronet in self-defense, I might add, only made one small mistake. He poured out 2 glasses of wine and then tipped the remains into the 3rd glass to make it look as though 3 glasses of wine had been consumed. And of course, port wine has this particular characteristic of the lees, which forms in the bottom of the glass, not in the top of the glass. All he had to do was pop off a second glass of wine, and even Sherlock Holmes might have been fooled. And of course, this just comes back to show Holmes's observation from the man with twisted lip. It is a trifle. There is nothing so important as trifles. The second stain. Interestingly enough, it's Lestrade who identifies the clue, but of course it's Holmes who goes beyond the clue to find the meaning of the clue. And it all rotates literally upon a carpet that was turned around to extract something from the hole in the floor, and then the carpet was replaced but in the wrong position. The observation here is vital. The Valley of Fear. One of the interesting things about this story, when you look at it, is that Arthur Conan Doyle has gone back to his roots. You've actually gone all the way back to a study in Scarlet instructor, because you have the murder mystery at one end of the story, and you have the American backstory at the end. Okay. And finally, we come to something of a happy ending. The Veiled Lodger, very mysterious, only communicates via printed notes. That's printing by hand, not mechanical printing. Obviously wants to keep herself to herself. And Holmes talks her out of committing suicide, and she decides to live on with her life as it is. So finally, after all that killing and death, we do get something of a happy ending. And these are the credits and sources for the illustrations. Thank you very much. I'll just stop sharing now.
Thank you, Robin. That was a great tour of the Murder in the Canon, and focusing again. Last time you presented, you focused just on the outdoor murders, and this time was the indoor ones. Also was fun comments in the chat about candlelight code from the Red Circle. So that was fun as well.
Okay.
All right. So any questions? Let's get the discussion going for Robin. If you want to unmute and ask a question, or do the hand raise feature and I'll call on you, either one. Robin, I'd like to start just by saying, like, now that you've looked at quite a few murders in the canon and quite a variety you've showed us, what do you think that tells us about, how does that add to the Sherlock Holmes canon by having these everything from simple murders or suicide up through swamp adder poisoning or hounds from hell? Like, what does that tell us, or what do you think that adds to the Holmes canon?
Well, I think obviously Arthur Conan Doyle, like most Victorians, was preoccupied with murder. Obviously, it's not a very nice thing, but it's got a kind of fascination to it. You've only got to compare that to the ongoing fascination with the Ripper murders.
How about the way that someone like, do you think that made people more interested in the stories by having these kind of outrageous murders? Occasionally, I mean, death by swamp adder poisoning is, I keep going back to that one, or I can't help but come back to that one. I just think that's such a unique story. It's, definitely in the top 3 at least.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, there's something just quite ingenious about it. But Do you think that that is something about the cleverness of it that draws us to it?
Oh, absolutely. We can admire the ingenuity while deploring the crime.
All right. Other questions? I don't want to hog everything here. Anyone want to unmute or even just pose not necessarily to Robin, but even to the group would be fine as well.
I just had a comment about the empty house when you were saying that, you know, poor Mrs. Hudson on her hands and knees and moving the Sherlock statue around. Because I always thought when reading that story, why didn't he just use an irregular to do that? Why did he make Mrs. Hudson do it? So,
Yes, that's a good point, because an irregular would yeah, but they're smaller and they can get down to the floor level.
exactly.
I was just going to jump in and say, and other people can jump in. I think that that's a sign that perhaps, you know, she's old Martha mentioned in his last vow that she, you know, there's a lot more to Mrs. Hudson maybe than meets the eye, and that she was more involved than perhaps we know.
Maybe more trustworthy.
Also, Holmes has just gotten back from from being away. He may be out of touch with the irregulars for the moment. Remember, he's been there 3 years. Some of them might have been older and graduated out of it. Did the group still exist at that point, or did he have to re-engage some young boys to be back there? Mrs. Hudson was there and he could trust her. New boys would have to be educated, told what to do, and so on and so forth. You know, it becomes a difficult job. Ask Mrs. Hudson; she'll do anything for you now that you're back.
That's a very good point. It would have taken Holmes some time to pick up his contacts and re-establish, I suppose, his backup organization.
And boys grow, you know, and they outgrow. They get to a point where they're doing other things. If these boys were 10, 11, 12, 15-year-old, even a 14-year-old or 13-year-old would have a job.
Yeah. Just bear with me. I'm just posting the bit in the chat relating to Charles Augustus Milverton. Ah, here it is. No. So my Zoom's gone all up the.
Oh, it's there, Robin.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's in the chat.
We got. Can everybody see it? Was the charges against Holmes and Watson if they've been caught in Milverton? Oh.
But they didn't do the killing.
No, but they didn't do anything to stop it.
Right.
Well, they're not obliged to stop it. You don't. If you see somebody committing a crime, you don't have to step in and try.
No, no.
So that's not against the law. To mind your own business.
But they could have been seen as an accomplice because they saw who did it and they didn't report it. That there is that aspect of it.
Well, how do you know who she was? Can you prove that they knew? Watson didn't know who it was. Presumably, Holmes sees the picture and then says, "This is who it is." But would he have known without the picture? We don't know.
Well, Watson wrote about it, so you know. I don't know.
Well, Watson disguises people and places and things and times all the time, so that's not proof of anything except that Watson wrote it.
Yeah, right. Listen, Agatha killed Milverton and set Holmes and Watson up to be her past patsies. It's so obvious.
The other piece is that we only hear Watson's story, right? I mean, if they were involved in that murder, he wouldn't confess in the Strand.
I don't know. With the list we have already that Watson confessed to, I guess he would always just say, "Oh, it's just fiction." I embellish. I suppose is what.
Right. The names were changed. It wasn't us.
Right.
Yeah.
We just told you it was us.
Right.
No, it was Sharonford and Ormond. We had nothing to do with it.
It was that Solar Ponds guy.
Yeah.
I can only assume that the story was published, if not after the statute of limitations, then perhaps after Lestrade retired. And I can only assume that years down the line that he marched over to Holmes County Sussex Downs and went, "I knew it was you. I knew." And he's like,
I don't think Lestrade. Do you think Lestrade had the longevity of Holmes? I don't know that he's immortal in my mind.
Well, I have a soft spot for the little fair face, so I like to.
No, I like him, but I think he simply retired, maybe went into private practice someplace in the suburbs or the exurbs or the, one of the outside of the county. He's one of the home counties or something, and did a little private work to add to his pension, and that was that. I think he was happy to retire when he came to retirement.
Mm.
I'm not a huge. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm not a huge like shipping or fic fanatic, but is there a bunch of what do they call it? Stradlock? Is that what it would be?
Sherstrade was the nom de plume in BBC Sherlock. I was a Maestrade. I am a Maestrade shipper in BBC Sherlock itself.
There you go. And so that would be Mycroft and Lestrade.
We had no evidence, and they never met on screen except once at the end. But it was the second biggest ship in the fandom. Good times. Good.
Titanic-sized ship.
Yeah.
Just because it involves Mycroft.
I'm wondering what people think. Like, what are like the top? What do you think is the top murder in the canon? What's the one that you think of? Like, it either is like gruesome for you, or you're like, that was the one that like it's such an interesting. Like, I keep bringing up Swamp Adder because I just think that's like one of the coolest ones. But anybody
Black
else
Peter
have something they love? What, Max? What was that?
Transfixed by a harpoon to the wall.
Oh.
There's a new Hulu series coming out called with Mandy Patinkin called Death and Other Details. And the first murder occurs a la Death on the Nile, in one of the staterooms, and the guy is transfixed to the wall. There's like a chalk outline against the wall that you see. And I was like, somebody's been reading Christie and Holmes a lot.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
How about other interesting murders in the canon?
Well, I mean, you got to hand it to the speckled band, despite the dubious herpetology. I mean, snakes might not drink milk, but speckled bands do. So check.
Walter?
I think somebody transfixed to the wall has just taken modern art too far.
Oh, millennials love it though.
Yeah.
I mean, like, those
Walter's been trying to get in. Let's let Walter have a minute here.
Nailed it.
Walter?
Yeah, my daughter always loved the Granada film of The Sign of the Four, and what the guy looked like when he was dead. He was and he'll come up and knock on the door, and if I open the door today, it will be the sign of 4 at me.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, Charles Augustus Milverton's murder is just fantastic and well deserved. So it's satisfying. Take that, you hound, and that, and it's just it's so good. And then that visceral image of her grinding her heel into his face. It's like
that's what I was gonna say. It's the ending for me.
Yeah,
not just the murder.
Unless Holmes said to her, "You got to get out of here fast. Step on it."
Oh no!
Oh,
we're on a roll today.
You guys are
It looks
awesome.
like this guy stepped.
Sorry,
Sorry,
sorry.
it looks like this guy's.
Apologies.
It looks like this guy stepped 1-2 over the line.
Yeah.
I always thought the severed ears in the cardboard box.
Well, yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, the death
Mm.
off screen, but
Mhm.
You know, it's not a murder or any sort of gruesome thing, but I always thought it was really creepy finding, like, Violet Hunter found her own hair in the
Yes.
drawer.
Mhm.
Like, and it's like, wait, how did they get my hair? And it's identical, and it's just the creepiest, like, it sends shivers.
Robin, I'm glad you brought up with the Lady Carfax, the buried alive fear. I mean, that, Poe, of course, had the premature burial as well. And that just seemed like such a big fear historically in the Victorian and before time period.
Wasn't Hans Christian Andersen really fearful of being buried alive, so much so that he had like a little sign and a bell next to his bed? Or that might just have been an urban legend I heard growing up, but
A lot of Victorians had that bell and put into their coffin. Their coffins with a little string, and the string was tied to their hand. And should they wake up and move their hand, the bell would ring.
Mm.
and then if they could rescue in time, it'd be hours of entertainment. Ding, ding, ding.
Now, they happened to do that in the middle of the night when whoever was, like the guard or whoever was around the cemetery was off sleeping. Well, tough luck.
Well, my question is sort of one of, how many documented cases of premature burial were there, or was it just a mass hysteria sort of, everyone is afraid of this now because it is such a terrifying concept?
That's a good
I
question.
think the Victorians were mad about death anyway. They took the hair from dead people and turned it into jewelry for women to wear.
They
Yes.
took the hair from live
all of
people
these
and
things,
did
they
that
mourned
too.
forever. I mean, it was their mourning went on, and you kept changing the color of your clothes according to how long you've
Yeah.
been in mourning. It was a whole ritual that
You'd have
everybody
to,
had to act to. It was just they just became obsessed with it.
yeah. Well, and we had a different relationship with death then as well. It wasn't as much of a never to be seen again. It was that spirits were here with us, right? And that we would picnic in the cemetery, because there were no great public parks, but we would picnic in the cemetery around the graves of our loved ones and include them in our
Yeah.
family events.
Well, even Conan Doyle believed that he was going to come down and tell people
Mhm.
things after he was dead.
That's true.
Yeah, he
That's
appeared
a
at the
Seemed to have
Taurus
worked
meeting
very well
recently.
for him, but he got his wires crossed, obviously. But
I was
Walter?
promised. Oh, sorry.
Well, you want to jump in again?
I'm going to tell you that when you go to a national cemetery, the stones in the national cemetery are such a height that you can sit on the round stone and have lunch with your relative who's buried. And that's the reason they're that way. But there is a place in Arlington Cemetery where the Confederates have some people buried, and they put they have theirs at kind of a triangle. And one man said, "No damn Yankee's going to sit on my headstone." So that's the reason for that.
Oh.
I mean, to be fair, then nobody could sit on their headstone.
Or maybe it was a commentary on how thick the rear ends of the Confederates were, that they could manage to balance up there.
these little cushions made. The bottom was like this, and the top was like that. Put the cushion on top of the triangle.
Robin, I'm curious to know what when you just did all this work, what were some of the murders that really stood out to you?
Obviously the speckled band, the Cornish horror.
Oh yes.
Because the after effects of that, although intoxicating, you might just think, oh, it's an elaborate potpourri, or maybe they had a curry for dinner. And you wouldn't associate that that smell with causing the death. You put it down to some some family illness, maybe.
Right.
I thought the Cornish horror was just their cooking, but then again, I'm Welsh, so I can say that.
Any last questions or thoughts or anything before we wrap?
Only one from me. It's quite obvious, having gone through all the canon now, that Conan Doyle didn't want to write straight mysteries. There's a handful of mysteries where you can see he might have been writing spy stories, such as the Second Stain, but also there's a lot of nautically inspired stories. So maybe Conan Doyle wanted to write sea stories, which of course he did in his other writings, and he just merged it into the Sherlock Holmes universe.
There is a lot of Conan Doyle's autobiography, or at least his travels on the whaling ships and his journey as a soldier, and a lot of that shows back up in the canon, whether he was already there or whether it was eventually something that he would do. So yeah, it is very interesting. He's always been fascinated by the literature of the day too. And recently there was is it Dan Friedman who gave the talk at the Norwegian Explorers Dinner, comparing some of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island to Sign of Four. And so that Sign of Four was as much an adventure story in that spirit as it was sort of a mystery to be solved.
And I also think with the short stories, not the novels, but with the short stories, he had to produce them. I mean, he had a contract, and he had to make a certain number of them by a certain time. And I think he got his stories from wherever. Somebody told him something, he read something in the newspaper, moved it around a little bit, read somebody else's story and said, well, I can take that, but if I change it a little bit, nobody will ever know, and put in a different cast of characters. I think he got his stories wherever he possibly could, because he just had to get them out.
Absolutely.
Well, he's so prolific.
It's not like a guy writing a novel and then waiting, 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years, as long as it takes him to write the next one.
Yeah.
He had to show up with the copy in hand.
Yeah.
There are other series that he's writing at the same time. Don't forget too. He's got The White Company, Brigadier Gerard, Professor Challenger. I mean, these are hits.
Yeah.
These are in different audiences, but they're hits. And he's writing those at the same time.
That's what he liked to do. The other thing was bringing in big bucks, and for a minimum of effort. I mean, when you think of the number of pages,
right,
a short story and the number of pages in one of his novels.
And yet he's begrudgingly writing some of the best literature that has ever existed. Oh darn! Another New York Times, if that were a thing, bestseller back then.
Yeah. But of course, Doyle was just the literary agent, right?
Of course we know that.
Right.
All right, everyone, we're about at time. I want to thank you all for coming for the January meeting. This one, with the holidays and everything, sometimes it's harder for people to get to it. In February, we're going to have Margie Deck on. She's going to be talking about her new book, The Genius of the Place, where she has a Doyle story, a non-Sherlock Holmes one, and followed by a sequel that she writes to the story, or at least a story inspired by it. It's a really cool book, and it just came out. And so she'll talk about that. She'll also talk about her work for the Arthur Conan Doyle Society. I also want to give another round of applause for Robin, because we had a great discussion based on your talk, my friend, and you did a really nice job. And also, if any of you are in London, I cannot recommend strongly enough that you contact Robin. His tours are just amazing. and you learn a ton from him, and it's just a lot of fun. So thank you all. And I look forward to seeing some of you, I hope, in New York, and others of you virtually in February. Thank you all. And I'll send out the links to some of those events that are coming up next week that you can attend virtually. All right. Take care,
Thanks,
everyone. Bye
everybody.
now.
Thank you, Derek. Happy birthday.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thank you
care,
for a great
everybody.
meeting.